As we move deeper into the 2025 NFL offseason, the Pittsburgh Steelers find themselves in a very unique and advantageous position. While many teams are already maxed out in terms of cap space or have finalized their depth charts, the Steelers are still sitting on a comfortable surplus of money. And with key needs still present on both sides of the ball, this sets up Pittsburgh as a serious player for late offseason free agency signings. Entered two big names still available on the market: wide receiver Amari Cooper and safety Justin Simmons. In a recent piece for Bleacher Report, Christopher Knox listed the top 9 remaining free agents and their most logical landing spots. The Steelers were the only team mentioned twice, once for each of these stars. That's not by accident. There's a very real argument to be made that both Cooper and Simmons are perfect fits for what Pittsburgh is building right now. Let's start with Amari Cooper. A 5-time Pro Bowler, Cooper is no stranger to production. In 2022, just 2 seasons ago, he hauled in 72 receptions for 1,250 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's a technician in route running, with reliable hands and a veteran presence that would immediately boost any receiving room in the league. Now, while he may not return to his peak form from 2 or 3 years ago, he still offers the kind of experience and physical skill set that makes him an ideal WR2 or WR3 in a playoff-caliber offense. According to Knox, Cooper would make a lot of sense in Pittsburgh, especially now that the Steelers are officially going all in for 2025 with Aaron Rodgers under center. Rodgers was acquired earlier in the offseason in a blockbuster move, and while the team also traded for DK Metcalf to give him a true WR1, they followed that up by trading away George Pickens, leaving a noticeable gap in wide receiver depth. Adding Cooper would give Rodgers a veteran receiver he can trust, one who's been in big moments and knows how to find soft spots in zone coverage or shake off man defenders with precise cuts. And let's be real, when you've got a quarterback like Rodgers, you want to surround him with smart, seasoned targets who know how to get open and stay on the same mental wavelength. Now, on the defensive side of the equation, there's Justin Simmons, a 2-time Pro Bowl safety who has been one of the most consistent players at his position over the past half-decade. Simmons had a solid 2024 season in Atlanta, logging 62 tackles and 7 passes defended while allowing a passer rating of just 81.9. That's elite-level play, especially from someone who's still only 31 and clearly has fuel left in the tank. Simmons isn't just looking for a paycheck. He wants to land with a contender, a team that's not just hoping for a wild card berth, but truly believes it can make noise in January. That's why Pittsburgh, even with some question marks, remains a logical destination. As Knox notes, quote, Simmons' desire to land with a contender could limit his market, but the Steelers are positioning themselves to be just that. They traded away superstar safety Minkah Fitzpatrick in the deal that brought Jalen Ramsey and tight end Jonnu Smith to town. That left a hole in the back end, and Simmons would be the perfect piece to help fill that void, not just as a player, but as a leader and communicator for a secondary undergoing major transformation. It's also worth noting the symmetry in these two potential signings. Cooper and Simmons both bring playoff experience, locker room leadership, and positional intelligence, exactly the kind of traits that teams with championship ambitions look for this time of year. The Steelers aren't just looking to fill roster spots, they're aiming to raise the floor and ceiling of this team before Week 1, and both of these names do just that. Now, will it happen? That remains to be seen, but the opportunity is sitting right there. The money is available, the need is real, the vision is clear. If Pittsburgh pulls the trigger on even one of these deals, the roster immediately becomes more complete, more balanced, and far more dangerous. And if they land both? Watch out, AFC. The Steelers are officially back in the Super Bowl conversation.
The wait is over, Steelers Nation. It's officially that time of year again. Training camp season in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. But this year feels different. It feels bigger. There's more on the line, more buzz, more eyes on Pittsburgh than we've seen in a long time. And it all starts with a pair of blockbuster moves that have completely reshaped the identity of this team. Aaron Rodgers is in black and gold, and TJ Watt just signed his long-term contract extension. With the business side finally taken care of, the focus shifts to the field. And let's be clear, the storylines coming into this year's camp are as intriguing as they've ever been. This isn't just another rebuild or transitional year. This is the first chapter of a legitimate Super Bowl pursuit. So what are we watching most closely over these next few weeks in Latrobe? All eyes on Aaron Rodgers. The number one storyline, not just in Pittsburgh, but arguably across the entire NFL, is this. How does Aaron Rodgers look in a Steelers uniform? Sure, we got a taste during mandatory minicamp, but those were just light reps. No pads, no real pressure. Now, with the full roster on site and full contact practices underway, this is where we find out what Rodgers really has left in the tank after his devastating Achilles injury in 2023. Can his arm still generate the same zip and accuracy? How's his mobility in and out of the pocket? Has the time away given him new perspective and hunger, or has it taken a toll on his timing and chemistry with new receivers? There's already a different energy around this team just from his presence. Teammates are gravitating to him. Coaches are trusting him. But greatness is measured in performance, and that's exactly what fans, coaches, and analysts will be locked in on. Rodgers versus Father Time, right here in Latrobe. The offensive line under the microscope. While Rodgers is the centerpiece of the offense, none of it works if the offensive line can't protect him. And that's where the next huge storyline comes in. Second-year tackle Broderick Jones and rookie Troy Fauchanu are carrying massive expectations heading into 2025. One is looking to solidify his place as a long-term starter. The other, a first-round pick, is being thrust into the fire from day one. Together, these two tackles represent both the foundation and the question mark of this offense. Let's not sugarcoat it. This O-line will be tested early and often in camp. Facing pass rushers like TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig in practice is about as tough as it gets. But that's also the blessing. If Jones and Fauchanu can hold their own against that group, it's a very good sign for what they'll be able to do once the season starts. There's a growing sense that offensive line coach Pat Mayer has something brewing here. If the unit gels, it changes the entire complexion of Pittsburgh's offense. Not just in pass protection, but in opening up lanes for Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Remember, Rodgers thrives when his run game is efficient. It sets up play action, opens windows, and allows him to manipulate defenses like only he can. The remade secondary. Chemistry will be key. No position group on the roster went through more turnover this offseason than the defensive secondary. Gone are former Pro Bowlers Minkah Fitzpatrick and Dante Jackson. In their place, a mix of experience, versatility, and potential greatness. The headliner, of course, is Jalen Ramsey, a big-time addition who brings swagger, physicality, and leadership. But he's not alone. Brandon Echols, Darius Slay, and Juan Thornhill all arrived this offseason, meaning the entire back end of the defense is essentially starting from scratch. That brings us to the biggest X factor of training camp: communication. You can have elite talent at every position, but if the safeties and corners aren't on the same page, if they're late on switches, unclear on responsibilities, or inconsistent in alignment, it can spell disaster. So much of defensive back play is mental. Pre-snap recognition, audible communication, adjusting to motion. This is why Latrobe matters. It's not just about seeing how fast guys run or how physical they are in pads. It's about how quickly this new unit can develop trust. Another wrinkle to keep an eye on: Jalen Ramsey's alignment. Will he play primarily outside, slide into the slot, match up against tight ends or big slot receivers? The Steelers are clearly open to experimentation, and Ramsey's unique skill set allows for a ton of flexibility.
With training camp in full swing and a completely reshaped roster taking shape in Latrobe, the question on every fan's mind is this: can the Pittsburgh Steelers really contend in 2025? If you're listening to the national media, you might hear a few raised eyebrows. Some see the roster overhaul and the addition of aging veterans like Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Ramsey and call it a last-ditch effort. But if you're paying attention, really paying attention, you'll see something much more calculated, much more dangerous, and far more promising. This isn't a desperation move. This is a strategic shift. One that's already starting to pay dividends, and one that, if the right pieces continue to fall into place, could put Pittsburgh firmly in the Super Bowl conversation by season's end. Let's break it down. Veteran leadership meets young core. One of the most compelling reasons to believe in the 2025 Steelers is the unique balance of veteran leadership and emerging young talent. It's not just about Aaron Rodgers and TJ Watt. It's about pairing guys like Rodgers with hungry, ascending players like Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., Jalen Warren, and Troy Fautanu. This isn't a roster built around fading stars. It's built around established leaders helping elevate young difference makers. When done right, that combination doesn't just create a good team. It builds a championship culture. Rodgers won't be asked to carry the offense on his own. Watt doesn't have to play 90% of snaps to save a struggling defense. This is a roster that has options, depth, and versatility. The roster isn't even finished. Another major reason for optimism? The Steelers still have cap space. A rarity at this point in the offseason, Pittsburgh remains one of the few contending teams with the flexibility to make at least one more significant move. And based on reports from Bleacher Report and other outlets, they're eyeing two very real targets, Amari Cooper and Justin Simmons. Either of those additions would elevate this team even further. Cooper would add a reliable, smart, route-running weapon to complement DK Metcalf and a group of younger receivers. Simmons would step in as a veteran field general for a completely retooled secondary, replacing the departed Micah Fitzpatrick. If even one of those signings happens, the Steelers roster would go from solid to complete. If both happen, that's a game changer. And it sends a message to the rest of the AFC. Pittsburgh isn't here to play for a wildcard spot. They're here to win the whole thing. A defense built to win in January. Let's talk about defense. Because while Rodgers and the offense will get the headlines, it's the defense that could carry this team deep into the playoffs. You've got TJ Watt, one of the most dominant pass rushers of this generation, locked in with a fresh new deal. Opposite him, you've got Alex Highsmith, and rotating in behind them is a young and relentless Nick Herbig. That trio alone can collapse pockets and wreck game plans. Now add in Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, and Juan Thornhill patrolling the secondary. That's a scary mix of physicality, ball skills, and football IQ. You need corners who can tackle, cover, and adjust in the playoffs. Pittsburgh now has 3 who've done it at a high level, and potentially 4 if Simmons joins the party. Defensive coordinator Terrell Austin has more toys than he's ever had in Pittsburgh. Blitz packages, disguises, man-free looks, hybrid nickel-dime packages. This is going to be one of the most creative and aggressive Steelers defenses in recent memory. And let's not forget, you win in January with defense and experience. Pittsburgh has both. The mental shift. This team believes. Sometimes the most important change isn't on the depth chart. It's in the locker room. And by all accounts, the vibe in Pittsburgh this offseason has been one of urgency and belief. Rodgers didn't come to Pittsburgh to write out the final chapter of his career. He came because he saw a roster that was close and wanted to be the piece that put them over the top. Watt didn't drag out his extension for drama. He signed because he believes in the team's direction. Ramsey didn't hesitate to come to the AFC North. He came because he wants to win. There's a shift happening. No more rebuilding. No more wait and see. This team isn't trying to find its identity. They've already found it. Now they're sharpening it. The road ahead. The AFC's brutal. No one's denying that. The Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, Bengals, and even teams like the Houston and Miami are all going to fight for playoff spots. But when you look at the Steelers' path, experienced quarterback, top-tier defense, improving offensive line, and remaining financial flexibility, it's hard to argue that they don't belong in that group. In fact, if Rodgers plays at even 80% of his former MVP level, and this defense stays healthy, Pittsburgh could surprise a lot of people this year. They've got the right mix of old and new, power and precision, grit and vision. And most importantly, they've got a plan. So to all the doubters out there, keep sleeping. Steelers Nation knows what's coming. This isn't just hype. This is the start of something real.